Good morning and greetings to you on this wintry day in the Middle East, that very quiet place that you've all heard about. I greet you wherever you may be on our beautiful planet, the third rock from our sun. This is video number 2 in the new video series entitled Life Lessons. And the title of this video is Fear. Today is the 21st of February 2024, and I am going to discuss fear. I know fear very well. I think I was born in fear, and I was in fear all my life. However, I also started a process from the age of about 12, mainly because I did not want to be dysfunctional anymore or fearful anymore. And I began the process of working on myself. And as I grew older, I adopted different new techniques, modalities, practices. I learned, I traveled, I learned. I paid attention as much as I could. And gradually, I must have learned how to defeat fear or not be affected by fear or not be fearful anymore, because I discovered at the age of about 65, 66, let me see, yeah, something like that. I had a situation, a confrontation with somebody I described in one of my other videos, and I thought I was going to fight this person. We were facing off each other over a very trivial matter, and I had no fear. This was for the first time in my life. I had no fear, and I was quite prepared to get in there, even at this older age, sorry, of 65, 66. And I realized in that moment that I did not have any fear. Now, it's interesting because I became aware of not being in fear while I'm living in Israel. I had been in Israel for maybe 4 years, 4 years, 5 years. And the experiences that I had here in a country that is constantly at war, that's being attacked from various sides and sources and people for the reasons everybody seems to know but don't really know. The truth is not as visible as people would like to think it is. There's much more to it on both sides, on all sides, much more truth. It's all to do with consciousness. The cause is of all conflict is a lack of consciousness. So here I am in the land that has been soaked in blood over thousands of years. And I learned this incredible lesson of not being in fear anymore. What is fear? Most people who are fearful have no idea what they are in fact in fear of. A lot of people are in fear of death, but that's because they don't know what death is. So they are in fear of the unknown. And of course, it doesn't have to be death. It can be anything which is unknown. A knock on the door at 2 o'clock in the morning is unknown, so you are in fear. And fear is an interesting experience, because the reality for me, what I learned, was that I was in fear of fear itself. In other words, FEAR, false evidence appearing real. So something happens, or we are faced with death, or we are faced with something that is unknown to us, and our imagination, our ego, our learned personality, learned character, our learned beliefs, our learned patterns of behavior, our learned programming all come in and say, oh, it's terrible. And quite often it's not terrible. Yes, sometimes it can be, but sometimes it is not. And it is not terrible very often. Death is another issue I will be talking about, because people are afraid of something that they have absolutely no knowledge of, and yet it is the destiny of everybody who is born to die sometime. It is an inevitable part of life, and yet people are afraid of it. Now, if you're afraid of death, then you are afraid of life. If you are in fear of death, you cannot have a life. So the cause of being in fear of fear itself is not knowing the truth. And the truth is elusive because most human beings have blocked themselves down, blocked themselves. They've limited their ability to know the truth. It is very strange, in my own observation, that it is much more easy for people to believe lies and deception than they are to believe the truth. Very interesting. Another discussion. So my suggestion is that we go to school. You see the picture behind me, the schoolroom. You go to school, but it's not an external school, it's an internal school. The internal school is where you find techniques, modalities, practices that enable you to remove the blocks, that which prevent you from seeing, perceiving, knowing, feeling your truth. If you have been injured in this life, or any other life actually, and you brought the baggage with you, which is generally what happens, we suffer from something called PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome. And that colors the way we respond to those circumstances that affected us earlier in this life or in another life. So if somebody was killed violently in another lifetime, they will come into this lifetime. The tendency is to be in fear of having a similar experience. So the idea is to remove these blocks, these impressions, which are unnecessary when we raise our consciousness, when we develop more of our innate human potential. Consciousness is a word that most people have heard from time to time, but most people do not know what it is or how to apply it to themselves. And I would suggest that you go to my website, which is anthonyaltman.net. That's ANTHONYALTMAN.net. And it's also written below in the comments. And you will find a pretty good explanation of what consciousness is, even though consciousness can only be experienced. It's very difficult to describe it. And to describe the indescribable is a challenge, but I think I did reasonably well. Go there, read about consciousness, and you will understand that the more consciousness that you are able to access, the more you are able to perceive about the truth of life and how to differentiate between lies, deception, and truth, and to know that fear is nothing more than false evidence appearing real. There's so much more to discuss here, but I'm keeping this video short. if you are a person who's in fear and you want to resolve that within yourself, then you can go on the internet, you can listen to a lot of people who also have a lot to say, or send me a message down below and I will do my best to communicate with you and help you with information that may be of some assistance to you. I read a book once called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. That was very helpful to me. Fear does not really exist. When I overcame fear, I, in in essence, I became so disgusted with myself and being in fear of fear or being fearful that I turned around and I put up my fists and I said, "Come on, fear, come on, let's do, come on, I've had enough of this," which is basically what I did in Israel in that instant. And when I faced fear, it wasn't there. Fear was a figment of my imagination. I was in fear of fear itself. I was in fear of my own ignorance, not knowing. And the story, I'm going to continue. The story that I had very quickly was that I was with my wife. I know I'm repeating this story, but it's so important. I had already learned to conquer fear, but I did not know that. So creation, life, said, "Come on, we're going to give you a situation and we're going to test you to see if you are with or without fear and to see what you've learned." So I'm in the supermarket with my wife and we are in a line, a queue, waiting to buy cheese at the cheese counter. And this guy waltzes in and goes to the front of the queue. And normally I would just say to my wife, a terrible thing and all that, and, just say nothing. But I heard myself speak out loudly for everybody to hear. "Get your ass over here at the back of the queue, the line, where it belongs." I couldn't believe that I had such, um, that I said that I did that. I was shocked. And while I'm being shocked, this guy walks up to me and he starts to shout at me and raise his voice and get aggressive with me. And all of a sudden, something else clicked in. I got very, very quiet, unusual for me, very, very peaceful. And I raised my voice a bit. I defended myself and I told him he was an idiot or whatever. And we were standing right in front of each other, face to face, nose to nose. And I had this feeling, oh, we're going to fight now. We're going to have a fight. And I clenched my fists and I said, now to myself, I said, "Watch your tooth. It's an implant. Be careful of the tooth. Let's get on with it." I couldn't believe that I did not have fear. And the guy opened his eyes and walked away. He backed down. This was a shock to me because I have never acted like this in my life. And it proved to me that over the years, what I did, learning, developing consciousness, developing my innate potential, doing meditating, doing all sorts of different things for different people, I was able to transcend fear. If I could do it, anybody can do it. So if you want to discuss fear with me, I invite you. During the recent pandemic, most of the people who had the jabs were in fear. And the information now surfacing and coming forward, the truth, if they knew that truth, they would have made a different choice. Many would. Fear can do terrible things. Fear can destroy you, can destroy a civilization, a country, a planet. Let's work on that. There's no requirement or need for any of us to be in fear. I'll be happy to discuss it with you, and thank you for joining me on this road less traveled. Thank you.